right and what's good, you're going to experience life like that. So how we describe, again, our life, our circumstances, that's the conversation that we challenge you on Thursday nights. You know, I always ask that question of this audience in particular, what's it like being you? You know, they don't know the importance of that question, but I ask it every week. What's the inner dialogue about with you? Are you bitching often? Are you whining often? Are you a complainer often? Or are you pretty much a person who sees the goodness and keeps on focusing on what's right and what's good? So we have a short dramatization for you, as I said, and it's written by my friend Roy in Florida, Roy Billette, who's, I think he's a genius. He can dramatize almost anything. If I call him or I write to him and I say, I'm having this discussion or this lesson I'd like to flesh out just a little bit, he always has a couple of minutes of dialogue that can help make a point on almost anything I teach. You will see in this two characters, and you'll see abundance, you'll see lack, and maybe they'll learn from each other, and maybe they won't. It's just like us. We could learn from everybody, right? Every encounter is a holy encounter. There's the possibility to learn in every circumstances and with everyone. But do we? Funny thing about our programming, what we're programmed with has a tendency to stay with us. People come to our teaching, and we give them lots of information about the potential that is theirs to use. Not everyone goes for it, though. And my commitment always is to teach and hope that you go for it. Go for the great. Go for the good. Go for becoming the person you were meant here to be. So we're left with many questions to consider in this little dramatization. You know, some of us think in terms of abundance, and other people think in terms of lack. And was there a change? You know, and we encounter people, and oftentimes we think that what we have to say changes them, and oftentimes what we have to say doesn't change them. In the end, we choose what to think about. We write our own stories. Good stories, I'm here to tell you, the kind of which I'm used to, what I've grown accustomed to. Good stories take time to write. And your life can be thought of as a good story. It can take time to write a great story. Stop waiting, though, for the chance for life to bring you something. Stop waiting for that. Let's start writing better stories and rewrite our old stories, the stories that would suggest anything about ourselves, that something is wrong or missing. We're going to remind you there's loads of opinions out there, and you know the old saying about opinions. There's plenty of them. We all have them. And let's start writing, you know, with a broader brush and a larger story. And let's start to create a new picture. And with that new picture, let ourselves hitch our wagons to a star. Ralph Waldo Emerson years ago suggested all of us hitch our wagon to a star. And I remember hearing about that when I was about 18, and I guess I didn't really fully get it. I don't know that I entirely get it now. But I do understand that what the mind of man can see and believe, it has a tendency to bring into your atmosphere. So what I can see and believe, I will achieve if I'm focused. So there's an inner picture that we all have of ourselves. The questions I throw out to you tonight, after we see the little dramatization, where people are stuck in their opinions, obviously. I chuckled as I watched these two rehearse this earlier, and you know, one person has a very strong opinion, but the other one did too, and they're both trying to convince each other of something, and then I don't know that anyone really convinced anybody of anything. And is that really the way it goes? Emerson wrote years ago, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. So where is it that we're open to new thoughts and new thinking? The world is, everything is possible. You know, we're each created in the image and likeness, people say, of their creator. And I don't take that literally, but I do understand that we have the ability to create, and we have the ability to see everything differently. So what have you come here personally to learn? What is it that makes you happy? Those are the questions for tonight, because these are part of the keys to learning to love yourself, is to discover, you know, what within you've come here to be, and what you've come here to express. You may not think of yourself as a teacher, but each of you are teachers. I remember it being said to me years ago, we are teachers to one another. We're learning from one another. Again, if you're open. In the skit, I question whether they were open or were they not. But it isn't about the characters in the skit. They're really there to dramatize, you know, are we open? Or are we really about defending our position? As we think of happiness, we know that happiness is that feeling that comes over us when we know life is good and we can't help but smile, or we have a sense of delight. In the Louise Hay material, there's a suggestion for us to list everything that makes us happy. And we can, for a moment, pause, and I'd like you just to think, for your own sake, what is it that makes you really happy? What is it? What few things? And usually, you can think of a few. I thought about this when I was creating this lesson yesterday, the day before. I remember a time in my life, I think I was about 25 or 6, experience I had in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. It was around 1982. And I have no words really to describe what I experienced that day except a sense of complete joy. All I know is it was a major reset moment in an afternoon for me. After a year of contemplating life and journaling and doing a lot of inner work. I was working a couple little jobs and I was very healthy and I was journaling and meditating. I wondered then if I would ever have such experience as that again, something that brought forth that kind of joy. And I never really did, not exactly like that. Yet things very subtly shifted after that experience for me, and that would be a whole nother talk that I'll have with you all another day. During that time, I was learning that life was not meant to be a struggle. Ernest Holmes would say, misery is optional. No, I've got that backwards. That's Bill Wilson. Ernest Holmes would say, suffering is not God ordained. Same idea. So at that point in time, I was beginning to learn about joy and peace, and I had such a journey ahead of me, as many of you have had journeys ahead of you. And all of us have been through a lot. By 1990, I'd moved to Florida, and I remember being in a very, very tough spot. And I was taking care of a friend who was very sick, 1990, and I was driving around at that time in a broken down car, if you can imagine. Since then, I've had probably 30 cars, beautiful cars, new cars, no broken down cars. But 1990, it was a broken down car, and I was taking care of a friend. And I was always being towed someplace, it seemed, and I was always needing to be in important places like hospitals and work, and it was a bleak moment, and yet it also had its beautiful moments too, as anyone can attest who's ever helped a person make their transition. One Friday night, I took a trip up to see my parents. I took a train because I didn't trust the car. And I met them in Palm Beach. And I had a wonderful meal in some restaurant that I could never dream of going to on my own at that point in time. And when I came out of the restaurant, my parents gave me the keys to a car, and it was a new car. And I was speechless. Nobody had ever done anything like that. And for me, I had no cause to think it was going to happen. I just remember it was one of the happiest moments of my life. And it really had nothing to do with the car, I don't think, as much as it was that they realized that their son was really going through something that was unbelievable. And I don't have the words to describe how I felt other than it just blew me away. Since then, life marches on. I've bought many, many beautiful cars, maybe too many. Some of them I replaced within a year. And there was always happiness when I'd acquire a new car. If you can imagine your version of the best car you could ever own. I've had a bunch. And now I call those things shiny things. Shiny things bring us pleasure. At least they did me, but it's fleeting. It's nothing that really lasts very long. Maybe a month or two, tooling around in a new Mercedes convertible. That was fun. A Jaguar another time. I've done it with artwork too. And these things are gorgeous, and I still like them. But I don't care that much about them. The pleasure they brought me was kind of fleeting. It can be anything. You can get a shiny new girlfriend. Status chick, right? New boyfriend, whatever it is. You know, people acquire things, to make them, they think they're going to be happy, right? Maybe there are things that you do or that you're collecting. Be careful of that collecting stuff that make you happy. Because we don't own anything, really. Everything is just in our hands for a period of time. So maybe there's things that you seek and you look for that you think will make you happy, or you're in the process now of searching for something, some job, some occupation, something that will make you fulfilled. Once you find it, maybe we are like Roy Billette taught us in our skit last week, blind to our blessings. That was a beautiful skit because it dramatized how we can have everything and we don't really think that way. We can be blessed with health and wealth and abundance. And you might say, well, I don't have all my health. I'm not like I was when I was 18. I could say, but heck, you're 65 and you're doing really well. But you don't think of yourself as doing really well. So that dramatization about being blind to our blessings was so good because as I reflected on it through the week, I have so much. I have so much. And I would suggest you do too if you take the time to reflect upon what you have. The reflection upon your blessings will bring you to a place of gratitude, and gratitude, as we've said in previous classes, is a causative thing. Gratitude is causative. It changes everything. So it starts with you and it starts with consciousness. There's a famous line in a book I love, which is simply this: in truth, there is nothing outside of you. And as people know, I've said this to Averill before in conversation one-on-one, and probably to this whole audience, I used to be one of these people that there was not a bus or a train or a plane to a guru, a goddess, or a tea leaf reader, or whomever it was. I would be on all these trips looking for something, okay? And then I slowed down a little bit, kind of like the story of the Wizard of Oz, What were they looking for? Brains, a heart, courage. And they were on a yellow brick road and they encountered every type of thing you could encounter, flying monkeys and things like that. And in the end, if I'm recalling a few things, the wizard was a fraud And Dorothy winds up going back to Kansas, clicking her red slippers, saying there's no place like home. There's no place like home. Everything that you're looking for, ladies and gentlemen, you already possess, that you need right here and right now. So yes, thank you, Roy Billette, for your wonderful skit last week, where he emphasized that many of us are blind to our blessings. So back to my line for tonight. In truth, there is nothing outside of you. You get to create a happy world and you get to be a happy person in it. Or you can be a whiner. You can be a complainer. You can stare at your paycheck and talk about what's not there. You can talk about how people have done this to you or that to you. You can be in a grocery line, social distancing, and be argumentative with people. You can do all of it. It's entirely up to you. That, I've said to Jimmy this week, was always my mother's favorite line. And she was a very, very beautiful, but more than beautiful, she was very successful in life. And that was one of her best lines. It's entirely up to you. So you get to create a wonderful existence. You have all the power at your command to do that. Or you can be doing it the other way. And all I can say is just please practice some social distancing around me when you have a need to do that. Because for most of us, it's a full-time job just keeping ourselves together. You know, if you think about it, our teaching is about practicing the presence and knowing we're supplied and supported. And that's work. That's inner work. It takes time to write a great story, Roy said today. You're writing an epic tale, a great story. Each one of you are writing a wonderful story. And you don't have time for the nonsense. At least I hope you don't. I had to chase somebody out of the office today, driving me crazy. Doing the best he can with the information, the understanding, and the awareness that he had. But I'm telling you, I don't have time for it. And I ask you, do you? You know, it's here. You know, the story about Jesus with his mother at a time of his maturation, where he said to his mother, I got to be about what? My Father's business. And in terms of growing this spiritual center, we're doing important work here. And we don't have time to come down. The work we do here is the inner work. We work with consciousness. We don't want to be blind to our blessings. We also know the responsibility for change is ours. Nothing changes on the outer that doesn't first change on the inner. So, I now know that Spirit, my three-year-old boxer who I brought to New York, can make me happy. What's good about him is he won't let me forget him for long. We have to pay attention to our good and remember, as I invoke Jackie Gleason's most famous line, how sweet it is. Okay, that's something I want you all to think about. I was a young kid watching TV with my grandparents, and Jackie Gleason would be on with that, how sweet it is. I'd like you all to remember how sweet your life really is, and not be blind to any blessing, and know what a privilege it is to be here in this experience called life. Some of the ministers this week were protesting things that they don't like that are happening in social media. I listen to them. I mean, I don't really listen to them, but I observe what they're saying. And it's certainly their prerogative to express whatever they want to. There's always going to be protesters, and there's going to be pacifists, and who am I to judge either? I have been both in my life, a protester and a pacifist. Now, as I look at myself in a different time in my life, I choose to see the peace and the perfection and the good and the glory. I choose not to be in the story. A lot of time has passed since my protest days, am I finding this teaching? And finding this teaching would suggest that everything is in divine order, even plagues, pandemics, and all that we don't like. We still, in the midst of all of this, and any and all circumstances, can choose to be an instrument of love. We can understand that the other person is doing the best they can. We don't have to be angry. We don't have to respond in anger. We can just know that they're all doing the best they can. Looking back on your life, what has changed, considering these questions that we're bringing up tonight? Did you know that you are the source of your own happiness? Anybody in the audience? Did you know that you are the source of your own happiness?
So it is.
I can see a few of you saying yes and nodding your head. You are the source of your own happiness, okay? So if you haven't been told, I'm the one telling you. It's exciting to have wonderful new people come into your life, okay? I like meeting new people like many of you do too. People, places, and things will keep us entertained, and they will keep us busy. We must be clear, though, that these things do not make us happy necessarily. Happiness is in the same lines from Don Miguel Ruiz. Is take nothing personally. Same lines from Don Miguel Ruiz is take nothing personally. It's another big one. Don't take a minute to dwell on people's comments. I don't have the time for it anymore. I hope you don't. You know, Terry Cole Whitaker wrote the great book, What They Think of Me Is None of My Business. The only thought that really matters is what's going on within your head. You know, and are you dwelling on what other people are thinking and saying? If so, what a pity. Because you don't have to do it that way. Louise Hay would say self-acceptance and self-approval are the keys to all positive changes. I'll say that again. Self-acceptance, you know, loving yourself and self-approval are the keys to all positive changes. Only we can make us happy. Now I'm going to quote Buddha, okay? I had a slide. We don't have it for you tonight. Buddha said, happiness does not depend on what you have or who you are. It solely depends upon what you think. So Buddha suggested our happiness depends upon what we think, and what we think on will tell ourselves. What we say becomes the thing to monitor. Okay, the chitter chatter that was going on inside of your head, what we say becomes the thing to monitor. Ernest Holmes is in agreement with Buddha, by the way, long ago, and he said you can create happiness in the midst of hell. You can create happiness in the midst of negativity. So if you're in a tough spot materially right now, or if you're in a tough spot emotionally, or any kind of tough time or experiencing distress or dis-ease right now, you can heal your life. This lady, Louise Hay, wrote this wonderful book, which you know I talk of all the time. It sold 65 million copies, and it's still selling copies because she suggests that, you know, you are always going to be greater than your experience. You're always going to be greater than your challenges. The things in your life and your consciousness that have brought you these healing opportunities, you have the ability to heal. So if you're going through a tough time, as I said before, willingness is the key that opens the door. You could be like those two guys in the skit. They're chattering around back and forth, back and forth. I don't know who was listening to who. I don't know if anybody changed anybody's minds. In the end, it's up to you. It's entirely up to you and having the willingness to change. So our work is in consciousness. I hope you all know that. Begin talking about your gifts, talking about your blessings, talking about how great it is to be you. Talk about your great friends, the people who are cooking your meals, the people who are listening to you and caring about you. Think with gratitude about all these people. Think very big ideas that are worthy of you. Be grateful for all the people who take the time to listen to you, who care for you, and show you that they care. Life loves a giver, I was told by Bill Tolliver in the early 90s. Find ways to give your time, your talent, your treasure, because the more you are able to give, the more you'll receive. Clear out the cobwebs of your mind, your closets, and all the places where you store old baggage, and make room for love and for prosperity and abundance of every kind. Life loves a giver. Are you a giver? Are you one to trust life? The good you are looking for will establish itself always in your life, unless there's something within you that is blocking it. So I guess that will be my closing thought. The good that we are looking for will always establish itself in our life, right? Unless there's something within us that denies it. Happiness will follow all of this. Who have you come here to be? So at that note, I'm going to open up the floor and to ideas and comments. And also we had a questionnaire out for some of you last week from class on what your particular sense of the creative intelligence is. Some people call it God, some people call it the loving one. You can call it whatever you want. From last week's lesson, we were talking about the thing itself.